My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to all things Port Adelaide Football Club. I'm your host for this evening, Macca 19, and with me is regular co-host Fishing Rico 4. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, Macca. What about you?
Yeah, good, buddy. Good. We've also got a first-timer on the podcast tonight. Between us, we're really closing in on 100,000 posts. He's obviously a long-time poster on our board. He's the artist formerly known as Go Power. Of course, I'm talking about Schulzenfest.
Hey Macca, how you going?
Good, mate. Good. Good to have you on board.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Nice, nice. So, as we do with all noobs on the podcast, we thought we'd get Schultzy's Port Adelaide history. So, how did you come to support the club?
Well, I haven't been around as long as most of you guys. I was actually only 4 when Port Adelaide came into the AFL. But my family's got a long Port Adelaide history behind it. My grandfather had a lot to do with the club through his business. Two of my great uncles actually played a few games for the Magpies back in the late 60s, early 70s, that sort of area. So my family's had Port Adelaide in it for a long time.
Beautiful.
And eventually, it was about 2000, I think, I started going to football regularly with my mother and my uncle, who have both been sort of indoctrinated into the Port Adelaide way since they were kids. And then they did the same to me when I was a kid, and I'm glad they did.
Beautiful. Now, I thought I'd ask you a couple of questions just to go on a little bit further into your history. What was the first game you can remember going to?
I think the first game I went to was 1998. We were playing Fremantle, and I just hated it. And I whinged and whinged and whinged until my parents took me home at half time. So, yeah, luckily I got a bit more into it in later years. But I didn't love my first game, apparently.
I think Fremantle have that effect on a lot of people, to be honest.
Yeah, did the same thing last time we played Fremantle, probably.
What's your favourite game?
Favourite game? Well, Grand Final 2004, I suppose.
Yep.
Can't go past that.
True, very true. And favourite player, past or present?
I think I'm going to have to go with Tom Jonas. I've never really been into the defenders so much before, but this guy just does the job week in, week out, every week, never fails to beat his opponent, and it's just so handy to have a guy like that in the team, and he attacks the ball so ferociously and the players so ferociously, and it's great to watch.
Yeah, he's had a fantastic season. Certainly surprised me a little bit. When we first got him, I wasn't too sure what he'd be able to do, but you know, he's such a unique player. He can play as a tall defender. He can play as a midfield tagger. It's not really many people that can do that in the AFL. So I know I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do in the next few years. Okay, so obviously trade week has now begun, or trade month I should say. We've already made one trade, which is locked in and loaded. Obviously, Matthew White from Richmond is coming to us as a free agent. Quite a pacey midfielder. He's known for his long kicking. He can also tag some quick players, which we had some issue with this year. Me and Rick spoke about this a little bit last week. Schultzy, what do you think about this trade?
Well, this time last year I would have hated it, but Matt White, in the Richmond games I've watched this year, has just improved out of sight. He's kicking goals from pockets, he's kicking goals from 55 metres out. He's never really done that sort of thing before. So if he can bring that form to Port Adelaide, then I think it's a very good signing.
Very interesting. We seem to be really addressing a need for a bit of speed, don't we? And Matt White's going to provide that. And I must admit, I don't know an excessive amount about him, but I've obviously done a fair bit of reading over the last 2 weeks, especially on our board, and I'm interested to see where he's going to fit in. And I know people have been aggrieved about him being offered 3 years, but I guess that's part of the parcel, isn't it, boys, with trying to get free agents. You have to make them an offer which is more attractive than what they're getting at the other clubs, and sometimes that just is the term of the contract, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I personally don't have an issue with 3 years. I think that's a pretty standard contract offer these days. It's not like we're locking him in until he's 33 or anything like that. I think he's got a lot to give. Obviously, everyone knows my thoughts. I really didn't like him at all up until probably it looked like we were going to get him. And then I thought about it a little bit more and thought, well, he's a really quick player. We really lack a lot of pace. He can kick goals. His stats when he plays a full game are actually quite reasonable. The fact that he plays as a sub quite often really affect his raw statistics a little bit. But when he plays a full game, he's averaging around about 17 touches and a goal a game, which, for a second-string midfielder is pretty good.
I think having him on a 3-year contract, people can complain about that because he's only really had one good year. But the thing about contract length is it's sort of you're taking a calculated risk. Say if we signed up Brendan Archie, for example, to a 12-year contract tomorrow, obviously everyone would be shocked. But if he turned out to be a 200-game player, then nobody would be complaining. So if Matt White can keep up the form that he's shown this year, then there's nothing wrong at all with giving him a 3-year contract.
Yeah, absolutely. And Angus Mumfries was another one, wasn't he? I was a bit reluctant with the 4-year contract, and this year he's just been fantastic, and I'm not even worrying about seeing 4 years out of Angus now. So hopefully Matthew delivers something very similar.
Well, it's quite possible that he will. I think it's pretty clear that we're getting him so that he can play in the first team. I think he'll be an absolute lock for round one, and really looking forward to see what he can bring to the side. So we might move on and talk about another pickup that we got this week. Our first Irish player, his name's Daniel Flynn. He's signed to the club on a 2-year international contract. He's a 20-year-old. He's in the high 180 centimetre range. His testing at the draft combine was absolutely elite. 2.83 seconds for the 20-metre sprint is just about as fast as you can get. He was second in the agility test and fourth in the repeat sprint test as well. Schulze, how do you see him fitting in?
Well, obviously, as an Irish recruit, it'll take a couple of years, but I think it's a good calculated risk that we've taken, considering that he's a Category B rookie, I think they're called, so he doesn't even take up a rookie list spot, let alone a main list spot.
Yep.
And if, with all of his kicking ability that he showed at the draft combine, along with his incredible athletic gift, there's every chance he could be sort of the next Pierre Hanley or the next Ty Connelly. And if we get a player like that free, that's obviously an amazing coup for the club.
I'm very excited. I am very excited. I'm the same as Schulze. I think his draft results are one thing, but bringing that Irish Gaelic background and how some of those boys are really taken to the AFL game, I'm very interested to see how he goes. I'm very optimistic, especially with his draft combine results. I think he's going to. I'm very confident he's going to put the runs on the board. I know the small Warriors already called dibs on him and put the touch of death on him, so that's a bit of a worry. But I'm willing to look past that and think he's going to provide something exciting for us in the future. And again, it goes back to another common denominator, doesn't it? In speed, he's going to have raw speed, and with Matt White, more speed, and Pittard's another one with speed. There's going to be a lot of fast-running waves from the half-back line, I think.
Obviously, there's low expectations on what he can do in the first year or maybe two, but, if he can really come on and prove that he can play football at a decent level, he's every chance to get games later on this year and certainly a chance to lock himself into the side next year. I'll really look on to see how he goes with the Magpies next year with a very high interest level. Another player that we're still going after is Jared Polec, or Jared Trolec as he's now known as he seems to love playing the Crows and the Power against each other. Rick, how do you see this playing out, mate?
I could see it playing out that nothing's going to happen until probably, an hour before trade week is about to finish, and to be honest, I'm quite over it. Obviously on Trade Radio today they were talking about the Crows have got players to offer up, and obviously we're offering pick 30, and Brisbane's arguing that that's not enough for Polec, and I just it's just going to be one of these rumours and innuendo and merry-go-round and until right to the end. And I still think pick 30 is probably about fair for him with what he's shown over the last 3 years and his injury concerns. So it's for us, I think it's a high risk proposition to be offering up pick 13, and I don't like it. And if the Crows get him, well, so be it.
I know a lot of people are sort of indifferent to Jared Polec based on his first 3 years at Brisbane, but personally I really, really, really want him at Port Adelaide. From the first game I saw Jared Polec play, I think he got the ball about 60 metres out. They were playing Essendon and Brisbane were getting absolutely hammered. It was like halfway through the second quarter and they hadn't kicked a goal or something like that. Polec gets the ball 60 metres out, does a bit of a David Roden shimmy around Nathan Lovett-Murray, runs into the forward line and kicks a very classy goal. So he can stand up when the players around him aren't standing up. And that's especially with the trouble we've had with long momentum sort of patches from the opposition, which we haven't been able to stop. That's a handy thing for us. Personally, I wouldn't give up pick 13 for him as a straight swap. But if Brisbane can get pick 18 or 19 from Hawthorn for Billy Longer, a young ruckman, which is supposedly going to be a deal that gets done pretty soon, I would, if it came down to it, pick 13 or 14 or whatever we end up with after the Dale Thomas compensation swapped for pick 18 and Polec. I think that would be a deal worth doing for the club.
Yeah, got to agree with that as well. I think it's pretty clear that pick 30 isn't going to get it done. Whether the Crows can come up with something better than that, I guess we'll wait and find out. Whether they need to trade players to go up in the draft a little bit more and offer Brisbane a higher pick. We'll wait and see. But if pick 30 is not going to get it done, we've either got to come up with a player to send to Brisbane as well, which, I mean, a lot of the people on the board seem pretty reluctant to do, outside of Brent Renouf, who probably has zero trade value at all, and Daniel Stewart, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I'm certainly into this pick 13 for and us getting pick 18 or 19 back. I'm not sure losing 5 spots in the draft is going to be that detrimental to our sort of draft year this year. It might mean we might miss out on a player that we had our eye on, but I mean, if we get Polec as well and add another first round pick as well, I think that's a big win.
As I said on the board, you have to look at the big picture, and the big picture is that if we're giving away 13 and getting 18 and Polec back, then it sort of means that we're getting 18 and Polec as opposed to 13 and pick 70 or so in the 4th round, because we're getting 2 for the price of 1, and we don't have to use a late round pick on a completely speculative player, which we would have to use otherwise if we don't fill that list spot.
Rick?
There's a strong argument for it. I wouldn't be crying in my cereal if that was to come into place. I just think he's, for all his upside, he's still a high risk. I mean, 6 games in 3 years? If he can't get his body right, well, But I guess only time will tell what we give up if it does happen like that, and what we miss out on, or if we miss out on anything.
Yep, that's fair enough. We might move on and start speaking about a key position forward. It's something that the club has recognised that we need. I'm not sure there's too many people that would disagree with that. Whether there's anybody around worth getting is another question. Schulze, who do you see as a key forward target that we could possibly get?
The number one realistic target that I'd love us to get is Scott Gumbleton from Essendon. And if we could somehow get Polec with the 13 or 18 deal that was mentioned before, then we could possibly give up a 2nd round pick for Gumbleton if we can convince him to come here. I think Gumbleton would sort of give us the lead up centre-half forward, which we haven't really had since Treadray retired. It would allow Schultz to stay closer to home and lead up and have shots from 40 metres out, which is what he did best last year. That was his best year for the club. And I think Gumbleton's just sort of one of those diamond in the rough players who, for a number of reasons, hasn't been given the opportunities that his talent deserves, much like Schultz at Richmond. And he's the sort of guy who could have a similar improvement if we sort of stuck him in our best 22 and played him every week.
I just can't see us getting him, to be honest. He's one of those people that's spoken about every year, and it doesn't nothing really happens. And I guess I'm a little bit different, where I seem to be going the other way with how we've been talking on the board. We're looking at maybe within our list for next year. I'm confident that Butcher should be able to become a little bit more reliable, especially if he can get a full pre-season. But I'd also I'd also like to look at Jared Redden playing up forward more often. You know, I think he showed a bit of promise, and I think it wouldn't hurt, especially if it's sort of a stopgap issue this year. He's still young and developing. And the other one that was mentioned was Tom Cleary. I think he'd be worth a shot with his endurance base to run that sort of centre-half forward role if we needed to roll the dice with somebody, and see what goes there. And I guess the other rumour that's been floating about is if we were to look at somebody, I guess is the ruckman from St Kilda, Stanley, which again has got another bit of burst of speed on him, and I guess maybe he might be able to take a forward role too if we needed to. If that's someone we had to trade for, and it probably wouldn't cost us as much, but they're probably the options that I'd prefer to go down and have a look at.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about Reece Stanley is he's so flexible. He can play pretty much anywhere. He can play as a key forward. He's played as a key defender mostly this year. He can also go into the ruck as well. I guess the bad thing about him is he's basically a glorified Daniel Stewart, I guess. That he's got all these sort of physical traits and all these sort of interesting things that he can do with his game, but he very rarely has been able to put it together in the same game so far.
I wouldn't even call him a glorified Daniel Stewart. He's just Daniel Stewart in a different jumper, I think. I don't see what he gives us that we don't already have from Jared Redden. I suppose if we get him cheap and we can sort of move on Renouf, he'd be an upgrade on Renouf, but I can't see him being best 22 if we've got Lobie and Redden and Schultz all playing.
Yeah, I guess he's just, he'd be coming in as another option with a bit of experience, and I guess the club hopes that now that he's had 3 or 4 years in the system, he's played 20 to 30 games, he can maybe turn into that sort of regular, consistent footballer that I guess he has sort of threatened to do a little bit at St Kilda. I'm still not sure about that one though. Yeah, he's not really high on my list of on recruits. Someone that I'm pretty interested in is Jackson Payne from Collingwood. He's not really had much of a go there. He kicks a shitload of goals in the VFL. Schultz, do you have an opinion on him?
I haven't seen much of Jackson Payne, but I think the talk is that he's going to be heading to Brisbane for Patrick Carnesis, so
okay.
They might get their hands on him before we'd have a chance to. But I'd be open to it if we could convince him to come to Port Adelaide. It's always good to have another key forward option on the list.
Yeah, pass on that one. To be honest, I don't even know much about him. But wasn't there a forward drafted a couple of years ago by the name of O'Brien?
Tim O'Brien for Hawthorn.
Yeah. Was he a forward or a defender?
No, he was a centre-half forward. Recruited from South Australia. I'm not sure. I think he had a pretty decent year for his first year at Hawthorn. Didn't get a game though, but I think that he's someone that they're looking to replace Buddy in a long-term manner. So I'm not sure we'd be able to get hands on him without really paying through the nose to get him.
Because I reckon you were a bit of a fan of his when he was drafted, were you, Macca?
I think he was signed as well, so Hawthorn obviously don't have any plans to trade him, especially with Buddy gone now.
No, that's right. I guess the other one that's sort of been half mentioned is Levi Casbolt, which again I'm not really overly keen on, to be honest.
It's another Stanley trade, I guess, isn't it?
Try to play Cameron Hitchcock on stilts.
That's a fair call, that.
I think we're all sounding a bit depressed with this forward conversation. It must be a bit deflating for us. Well, there's not much out there.
No, there's not really much out there. I mean, you could even look to maybe Lewis Johnston, but I mean, given his end to the year, I'm not sure the Crows would be all that keen to trade him either, to be honest. But it's not really a whole lot out there.
He's another one who's just been signed, Lewis Johnston.
Yeah.
I still like the idea of offering Jeremy Cameron a $1.5 million a year payday or something for 5 or 6 years and seeing if we could have snagged it. I reckon that would have been worth a shot.
Could have been worth a shot, but not sure GWS still would have taken that, to be honest.
Let's do the buddy deal.
Do the buddy deal. Yeah. Well, he'd be worth 9 years, I guess, but...
He would be.
We got the power to win, power to roll, come on, Port Adelaide aggression, we are the power from Port.
Alright, we might move on from that and move on to our player reviews. We've got another 9 or 10 players to review this week. First one off the rank is Kane Cornes. He had another fantastic season this year. There was a little bit of a discrepancy between the Big Footy votes and the Port Adelaide votes. The Power had him third in their best and fairest. We had him eighth. Schulze, how did you see Cornes' year this year?
I'll put my hand up and say that I'd written him off at the end of 2011, but he's certainly come along. He's back to his sort of All-Australian best this year, I think. So his disposal, I think, this year has been better than it ever has been. It's been so much more attacking and creative rather than just kicking it 20 metres to whoever's closest to him. He's now looking for the best option and not the easiest option, and it's certainly improved our side a lot. For somebody who gets the ball as much as Kane, you want him to be using the ball very well, and if he is using the ball very well, it makes us a much better side, and that's what he was doing for probably 90% of the games he played this year.
Yep, he finished first in disposals, second in tackles, and also in rebound 50s for the club. Rick, what did you see as his best games for the year?
Well, I thought his first final, he was just instrumental. I thought his possession count was just amazing, and then and his influence overall, and then just his overall consistency during the year. He just stacked it up again, and I was with Schulze there. I thought I'd written him off too. I thought, I guess with Primus's treatment and everything else that he'd probably lost it, and I thought he did start to look like he may have been losing a yard of pace, which is completely understandable, and I think his worst game, which was being very critical, was probably the second final. He had a shocker, but he wasn't alone. But overall, hats off to him. 630 disposals, once again, 27.4 average. He just keeps racking up the ball, and again, as it was just pointed out, he used the ball pretty in damaging ways this year, which is good. So if opposition teams want to let him roam free, at least he's hurting us or hurting them on the other side.
Yeah, look, I thought he had a number of great games this year. Obviously, his final against Collingwood was fantastic. That was, I think, by far his best game for the year. But his first half of the season was fantastic. In that winning run that we had to start the season, he was arguably just about our best player. I mean, he was fantastic against Melbourne in round 1. He was very consistent against GWS and Adelaide in rounds 2 and 3. Again, he was nearly best on ground against Gold Coast in round 4, and he had a ripper against West Coast in round 5 as well. And he had a brilliant game. Actually, probably his best game was against Sydney in round 13, in my opinion, where he really shut Hanbury out of the game. And Hanbury was in absolute smoking form at that point of the season, and he had just about his worst game for the year. Right, next player on the list is Brad Ebert. His second year at the club. I think he had a better year than last year. He was super consistent all year. Had a great start to the year. His middle part against Sydney, Collingwood and Essendon was fantastic. That's where he really hit his best form. And again, his finish to the season was electric. I mean, in the prison bars against Carlton in round 23, he had 23 touches and 4 goals. It was good to see him amongst the goals again that week. And his final against Collingwood was electric as well. He ended up the season first in tackles, third in disposals, inside 50s and clearances, and fifth in contested possessions. Rick, how did you see his here?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Brad. I'm glad that he came over. I was really bullish on him coming back, and I just ET brought it up earlier in the when we started the podcast, and he was talking about how he just loves watching Brad Ebert just run the lines and gut run, and he's just such a solid contributor to our midfield. And the other point is that I remember when we were talking about him being recruited by us a couple of years ago from West Coast, everyone was very questioning on his disposal, and I can't really question his disposal at all. I think he's been a fantastic pickup, and he loves the club, and he's a great leader, and you can see that he's really driving our boys forward.
I think at times he can overthink his disposal a little bit. There's certainly times where he does make a few mistakes in a row, but he tends to clean that up and really finish strongly in his games. Schulze, what do you reckon, mate?
I think Brad, as opposed to last year, had a bit of a slower start to this year. He was playing off the back flank when Pittard went out. And Broadbent was having a bit of a slow start in the wing, and then they swapped them around, and both of them really improved a lot from that point on. I think Brad needs to play in midfield. The half-back line role didn't really suit him, but the midfield, he can just run and run and run, pick up heaps of the ball, kick goals, all the things he adds to our side. He can do better from the midfield than he can from half-back, and I hope he stays there next year because his second half of the year was very good.
Yeah, agree with that. I think the other thing that I'd like to mention is probably his leadership. I think with Boak and Ebert as our captain and vice-captain, we're really set for the future for the next sort of 5 or 6 years with a fantastic sort of leadership group there. I think Ebert's really taken that on board, and you could tell, in games that really mattered for the club, just how hard he was working all year. So we'll leave him there and go to his cousin, Brett Ebert. Not a fantastic year for Brett. He only managed the 3 games for the year, 2 at SANFL level and 1 at SANFL reserves level. He missed 3 months to start the season with an adductor injury. Then he hurt his hip, and then he finished with a hamstring injury. And of course he retired at the end of the year. We've obviously spoken about him a fair bit on the podcast in previous weeks, so Schultzy, I'll throw to you, mate, and see how you thought his career panned out.
Well, out of the sort of maligned Thomas and Logan and Kasisi and Ebert and all of those on the board, Brett Ebert was the one I was most interested to see what he could do under Ken Hinkley and Darren Burgess. He could get a bit more fitness and maybe try a different role and use that great kick he's got to hit up our leading forwards rather than trying to be a leading forward himself. But unfortunately, injury meant that he never got that chance this year. But overall, you play 150 games for the Port Adelaide Football Club. You've obviously done something right. It was probably never my favourite player, but he did bring something different to the side that not a lot of sides in the AFL have. I'm happy he was at the Port Adelaide Football Club for nearly the decade that he was here. Maybe a bit of missed opportunity that he never got a run in the midfield, but it's nice to have him here, and good luck to him in whatever he does in the future.
Good call, good call. Next player on the list is Robbie Gray, obviously coming back from a seriously bad knee injury last year. It took him 3 weeks to get going. He played his first game against Gold Coast in round 4, where he came on as the sub. And from then on, he had a pretty good year, quite consistent. I guess the main issue with his season would have been his disposal, which really struggled at some points in the year. But statistically, he had a fantastic season. I mean, he was first at the club in goal assists, 5th in clearances, and 7th in goals and inside 50s. Rick, how do you see improving next year?
Oh, look, I was very tough on Robbie this year. I mean, I understood that what he was coming back from was never going to be easy, and I think he's got the fitness base. Now he worked through the year and didn't get injured, which is a godsend. That he, with a full pre-season, we should see the best of Robbie and no excuses. I guess if I was to be very judgmental on him, I thought there was a lot of times this year where he tried to do a little bit too much and he got caught out for that. But I guess upon reflection, he had a lot of great influential games and a few shockers in between. But that's going to happen, isn't it, when you're coming back from such a horrendous injury as he was? But I think next year will be a big make or break year for Robbie Gray, and he's got all the tools to prove that he deserves his spot in the midfield and up in the forward line.
Yeah, look, a full pre-season under Burgess I think will do him wonders. I think it'll help him clear up his decision-making and some disposal errors as well. Again, there was a fairly big discrepancy between the best and fairest and the Big Footy votes here. We had him 5th in our Best Player Awards. The club had him 12th. Schultzy, what's your opinion on Robbie, mate?
I think the fact that Robbie Gray got through the season uninjured is a tick, and anything else he provided is a bonus after that horrific knee injury he had last year. I think next year is going to be, he'll definitely be better than he was this year. Yeah, well, next year, I hope he spends a bit more time in the midfield. I think he's a bit of a clearance machine when he's been run through there. There's been lots of games where Robbie's been put into the midfield and he's just won 3 or 4 clearances in a row. So I hope he can sort of get the fitness base back to do a bit more of that next year. I think he's got a lot to offer in that role.
Yeah, well, he was turning into that sort of full-time midfielder his last season before his knee injury. And obviously I think his knee injury sort of really halted that sort of development in the midfield for him. He played sort of half and half this year, and I think he did pretty well. But yeah, he's someone that I think, along with Andrew Moore and a couple of other players, that I'm really, really most excited about seeing what they can do with another pre-season under Burgess. So we might move on to Hamish Hartlett. He's someone who had a fair few sort of peaks and troughs in his year. His first sort of 5 or 6 weeks were absolutely stunning. He really turned into the player that we knew he could become and sort of threatened to be in his previous couple of years. Then he went through a really down patch for about 3 or 4 weeks there, where he just couldn't get the ball. He was playing in a back pocket. I think it was a little bit of self-preservation on the part of Hinkley there. I think there was a lot of rumours that he had a broken rib, or 2 broken ribs in fact. So yeah, after that he kind of worked his way back into the season, and he had some ripping games to end the year. Against Brisbane he was fantastic, against St Kilda as well. I thought his first half against Adelaide was probably the best half of football we've ever seen from Hamish, and that sort of needs to be the standard of him going forward next year.
I don't think Hammer's ever going to be the sort of player who's in the best week in, week out, but I think he's the sort of player who's going to win you 2 or 3 games off of his own boot every year, with just the fact that he lines up from 65 and you can just about mark him down for a goal, which is just such a rare thing in the AFL. It's probably just him and Daniel Rich that you can say that about. And yeah, I think he's got a lot to offer to our club, especially considering that skills are probably still the one thing that we need to work on more than any other. And Hamish has got skill by the bucket load, and he's a very important guy for us to keep around and to keep him fit and to keep him banging in those long goals and hitting people on the league.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit. I must be very critical. I must be a bit harsh on Hamish as well. I never realised. I'm just looking at the stats now that he still ended up averaging 20.1 possessions. And I remember the talk on the board was, if Hamish gets 25 possessions in a game, more often than not, we're going to win a fair few games because of what he can do when he gets the ball. So I agree exactly with what you're saying, though, Macca. Great start, dropped off, and then came back. I thought that first quarter against Geelong in the final, he was amazing. And the highlight for me was for his season was that goal at Etihad Stadium where he kicked it from about 70 metres out. Oh, sorry, I think he might have hit the post, and then he kicked another one that went through. He's just got amazing talent, and as long as we can keep him injury free, and I think this year was a great success for that. I know he did his shoulder late in the piece, but overall his body is starting to hold up now as he's maturing, and if we can get his possession count up a little bit more, he's going to be such an influential player for us. It's going to be hard for him, I guess. He's going to cop a tag and the moment he gets too much ball because of what he does with it. But he's another one of these young boys which is just working their way into that mature age bracket that's going to take our team to the next level.
Yep, our best and fairest results were fairly similar. We had him 6th, and the club had him 9th. And of course he was 4th in inside 50s and clearances for the club. Look, I think Hammer's still got quite a bit of improvement with him, just in terms of having the ability to improve his consistency from game to game. If he can stop those sort of 7 to 15 disposal games and really work them up to 15 to 20 disposals, then I think he really becomes best and fairest winner sort of level, and All-Australian level, because he's so dangerous with what he can do. He doesn't really need to get all that much of the ball to be damaging, but that when he gets it 25 times, which he did 7 times this year, and we won all 7 games, that's going to be a great thing for the club. Alright, moving on to the next player, and that's Campbell Heath. He's someone that had a little bit of an up and down year. It was his first year at the club. He played the first 7 games with some mixed results. I thought his first 3 or 4 games were fantastic, and he was one of those sort of recruits that really fit in straight away. He was playing in a back pocket. He was able to man sort of smalls and talls. I think overall sort of Tommy Jonas took over his position earlier in the year, and probably played it a little bit better than what Heath was, with a bit more consistency. So Heath found himself out of the side. His SANFL form was outstanding. And of course, he came back into the side for a couple of games later in the year. He played up forward against Gold Coast and kicked 2 goals. Rick, how did you see his season, mate?
No, I think what you've just said is spot on. It's he's a hard one because his start was actually quite impressive, and you're right. I don't think he did much to lose his spot in the side, but he just got overtaken by a few other players that were fighting for that same role, and then he struggled to get it back. But I thought he showed us a lot. He was hard, and he played that third man up and did it quite well. But as you pointed out, I think Tom Jonas was doing that role better, and he's just a little bit harder and a bit more discipline in the defence. But I think there's still a lot of upside to Campbell, and it's going to be a tough gig though for him next year as well, breaking into that defensive six if that's where his mark's going to be, and Matthew White coming in if he's going to play half back a bit as well. That's going to be another one he's fighting with, and and then you got Tom Cleary that might be coming up and who's been positioned in the half back lines as well. So it's going to be tough for him.
Yeah, I rate Campbell Heath. I always like the players who sort of play the third man up and they zone off their player and jump in front of a leading forward and help out their teammates. I think it's good for the team as a whole to have players like that in the side. I don't know if Campbell Heath will ever be sort of a consistently first 22 player. I think he might have a career a bit like Paul Stewart had for us, where he plays a few games in the NFL every year, but he can come in and he can fill a role in the back line or in the forward line and do it. Sort of, he won't be a liability. He won't be a star, but he will be a handy player to have around.
Yeah, that's it. I think he'll probably end up being one of those players that plays sort of 80 or 90 games in 8 or 9 years, and sort of like a Tommy Logan, where he might have a few years where he is really consistent and plays every game, and then sort of interspersed will be years where he doesn't really get much of a go, but that he'll always come in and do a pretty good job. Next player is Cameron Hitchcock, probably the unluckiest and also the luckiest player on our list, if not the AFL. Seems to do his hamstring every time he runs onto an AFL oval. His SANFL form is always pretty damn good. I mean, he always picks up plenty of the ball, kicks goals. He provides a lot of run, a lot of creativity for Glenelg, but he just can't get a free run at AFL level. I think it's pretty clear that most people think he's pretty damn lucky to be offered another contract next year. Schulze, I might start with you with this one.
I think I'm in the minority a bit, but I do actually rate Cameron Hitchcock. I think he's sort of the best goal assist player we've got on the side. He's got an ability to pick players out of traffic and hit them on the chest and set up goals, but he's just got to get his body right, because he can't play a player who every second game he's going to do a hamstring in the first quarter, because it just hurts the rest of the side. It cuts out the rotations. It means you can't play a player like Ollie Wines or next year's Ollie Wines equivalent and the sub role to give him a rest, because he's got to come out there in the first quarter, because Cameron Hitchcock has to be subbed off. And I'm not 100% opposed to him getting a second contract, but if he doesn't sort of start playing a bit more football next year, I think it's going to be his last year on the list.
I think you can see why the club rates him and wants to keep him around, because he is quick, he is creative, he uses the ball well, and he can kick goals. It's just a matter of him getting his body right. Rick, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you, Macca. I mean, we turned over a fair chunk of our list too. So, I mean, how many players do we need to get rid of? That's the other point. But he is lucky to get a contract saying that, because at some stage, I mean, he's early mid-20s now. You got to be able to get your body prepared right on game day, and if Jake Neade can come up and play most of the games and not get injured at a smaller build than Cam should be able to do the same too. I mean, one gripe about Cam, and it's not Cam itself, it's the supporters. the amount of games I've been to where Cam's playing and the ridicule he gets from a lot of our own supporters is pretty bad, actually. It's you're there to support your team, not to put your own players down, and hopefully the supporters try and encourage him instead of putting him down. But we need to get his body right and see what he can do, because we definitely need those small crumbing forwards. And if he can translate that SANFL form, which I agree with you completely, is fantastic, and bring that to the AFL for 4 quarters, there's something there, and hopefully, fingers crossed, he can show us that next year.
Yep, moving right along. Next player is Jack Homsch. His first year at the club, we recruited him from GWS as part of the deal that got us Jakey Need as well. He had a pretty slow start to the year. He missed a lot of the pre-season with injury. He started in the SANFL, had a pretty slow start. He played his first game for the club in round 10 against Western Bulldogs. He had 3 or 4 really good games in a row before having a bit of a shocker against Essendon in round 15. Then he got dropped, and then he missed pretty well the rest of the year with a cheek injury, with a broken cheek. Rick, how do you see his development coming on?
I thought he showed promise. I mean, he's still young, and I'd like another 2 centimetres on him, to be honest. But I think he showed a bit in the games that he played, and he hopefully will come in the next couple of years and be that defender that we're looking for. And I mean, really, it was good trading by Peter Roden, Port Adelaide last year. It didn't really cost us much to get Jack into our squad, and he was serviceable, and his disposal was quite solid, and his defensive play was okay, and he's young, like I said, and hopefully next year it's onwards and upwards, and we get a bit more out of him.
I think he's going to be a bit of a weapon going forward. I love his disposal. He's got such a long, beautiful kick. He can take a mark. He can play as a close shutting down defender, or he can play as a rebounding defender. I think he's got a massive future. I'm pretty sure the club see him as being part of the first 18 going forward next year. Schulze, how'd you see his 2013?
Well, my main criticism of Ken Hinkley this year is he didn't play Jack Homsch more. I'm a huge fan of what Jack Homsch can bring to the side. I think those few games that Tom Jonas played early in the season against Jeremy Cameron and Taylor Walker, where he shut them out, was sort of a blessing in disguise. It gave the coaching staff an idea that Jonas is maybe sort of better suited to those tall players, because I think he's a lot better suited to the smaller players. And we're a better side if we have Jack Homsch in the side taking on talls and Jonas taking on smalls. I think Homsch has got that sort of ability to make spoils where he's got no right to make a spoil that Jonas also has. And it just makes it a lot harder for opposition players to score goals on us when we've got players with that sort of closing speed, stopping them from taking marks on the lead.
He also learned a lesson in relation to messing with your man Tom Jonas, didn't he? And I don't think he'll be running into Tommy at training anytime soon.
Just protecting his spot, that's all right.
That's it. Well, last player for this evening is Justin Hoskin. We picked him up as a rookie list player. He's a small defender / midfielder from Port Adelaide Magpies. He's someone that I really wanted on our rookie list for a couple of years. He got the opportunity this year. Probably didn't take it all that well. He had a reasonably consistent first half of the year. Fell away quite dramatically to end the season and ended up in the reserves. Played 3 games in the SANFL reserves. Schulze, what do you think about Justin Hoskin?
Honestly, I've only seen him play probably 2 or 3 times, so I don't have any strong opinion either way. But I think if you're a 22-year-old or whatever he is, you can't even manage a full season in the SAFL seniors, then you can't really complain when you get cut from an AFL list. So maybe someone like Sam Gray, who came second in the McGarry, if we're going to go down the Port Magpies path again, might be a better option for the rookie list than Justin Hoskin was.
Yep, fair call. Rick, what do you think, mate?
Yeah, I'd have to agree completely with that. There's at 22 you should be really busting your way through the SANFL ranks and holding your place in the senior side. And if you can't do that, it's going to be a stretch to hold a place on your on the AFL list. But I mean, look, he got a shot and good luck to him. He's only a small percentage of players that get a shot on an AFL list, even as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, I saw him as a bit of a disappointment. I know Ford Fairlane and a couple of others know that I've been really pushing for him to get a go for a couple of seasons now after he sort of broke onto the scene in 2011. So yeah, a bit disappointing that he wasn't able to take his chance. I thought he had a pretty good pre-season, and the games he showed earlier in the year showed that maybe he has improved with an AFL pre-season, but he just didn't go on with it really. And in the end, yeah, as Schulze said, you can't really expect to get a second year if you end up in the SANFL reserves as a rookie list player. So we might leave it there for this evening. Thanks for coming on, Schulze. Great to chat to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And Rick, an absolute pleasure as always.
Yeah, cheers, Macca. No dramas. Did you have a good long weekend, by the way?
I did. Yeah, it was my birthday on Sunday, so I had a great one. It was fantastic.
Oh, well done. I enjoyed my long weekend fishing. I thought it was very relaxing, but not long enough, unfortunately.
That's it. Until next time, guys, go the power.
Go the power.
Go to power. See you guys.
Because we're 29 minutes gone and the breeze is going left to right. This is one of the toughest kicks ever.
And he's a long way out. He hits it.
Oh, what a...
And he's kicked it, I think. Hodges kicks it.
I don't believe it.
Port Adelaide, you are miracle workers.
That is unbelievable.
What
Hodges has kicked it. Unbelievable.
What a player. That is one of the most difficult shots for goal you could ever imagine. The breeze is going strongly from left to right. He's had to thread that through the eye of a needle. Let's get back.